No matter who wins a war, humanity always loses. In today's time, our world is rattled in conflict. Innocent students, civilians are stuck inside a war zone. But our world has also seen similar events in the past. Therefore, this time, let us witness how during conflict, innocent lives were saved and rescued. The story, politics, and diplomacy in our new series about India's greatest rescue missions. Kuwait, 2nd August 1990. On a dark, windy night at 2 a.m., 1 lakh Iraqi soldiers and 700 tanks entered the territory of Kuwait. The Kuwaiti army was caught off guard, which started a gruesome battle. Artilleries were exchanged at the pitch of darkness, and within just a few hours, the powerful Iraqi army captured most of Kuwait. Quickly, the Kuwaiti royal family and the country's top government officials fled to nearby Saudi Arabia. 6 days later, the Iraqi parliament declared Kuwait as the 19th province of Iraq. At that time, along with nationals of other countries, 170,000 Indians were stuck inside Kuwait. All of them were now cut off from the rest of the world. All of a sudden, Kuwaiti dinar was devalued by 1/12, and so lifetime savings of these people were now gone. Overnight, their bank accounts became inoperative, and soon reports started coming in of their property being stolen or destroyed. With each passing day, these people lived in constant fear. Houses of many people were attacked as Iraqi special forces carrying machine guns moved around. At that time, the civilian air travel in Kuwait came to a complete halt. Multiple airstrips were destroyed and damaged. For all those people stuck in Kuwait, there was no way out. At the plight of this situation began one of India's biggest global political endeavors to bring all of them back home. In 1990, India was going through a political turmoil, as 1990 was the year which saw 2 minority governments and 2 prime ministers who were in office for less than a year. Then reports started coming in. US was planning to attack on Iraq. The Indian government knew that anyhow they have to get their citizens out. The Ministry of External Affairs had made 2 plans in mind. The first one was to convince the US of not attacking Kuwait and thus ensuring the safety of Indians over there. Therefore, to execute the first plan, I.K. Gujral, who was the foreign minister at that time, was sent to Washington under the guise of attending the United Nations General Assembly. There, he met his US counterpart, Jim Baker, and also the UN Secretary General. But in the end, they realized that US was not going to back off from its plan. Therefore, they moved to the second part of the plan. That was to convince the leadership in Iraq to let India bring back its citizens. But there was a problem. Because of the resolution passed by the United Nations Security Council, India could not operate civilian flights out of Iraq and Kuwait. Therefore, all stranded Indians need to be transferred via a neighboring country. Saudi Arabia border was completely sealed. Therefore, the only option they had was bringing Indians over 1,400 kilometers away to Jordan. At that time, if Indians could travel to Jordan via Iraq, then the Indian government can rescue them. I.K. Gujral then quickly traveled to Jordan and landed in Amman. He met King Hussein, where he got the approval from the king that the Indian government can conduct their rescue mission. Then I.K. Gujral flew to Baghdad in an Indian Air Force aircraft. He met Saddam Hussein. He became one of the first non-Arab foreign leader to meet Saddam Hussein after the invasion. Due to cordial India and Iraq relations, Saddam Hussein agreed to allow Indians a safe passage from Kuwait to Jordan. After the approval, the people had to go through hardships to travel from Kuwait to Amman. They traversed through inhospitable terrain from Kuwait to Basra, then moved to Baghdad, and then southwards to Amman. Had to cross the final 75 kilometers of no man's land. People took a 10-day journey as the buses were not allowed to travel at night. During the journey, the families stayed in tents, with each passing day probably praying to reach back home. and finally people started reaching Amman. A procedure was put in place. The Air India manager was positioned at Amman, who would each day phone up the Civil Aviation Secretary and indicate the number of evacuees for the next day, and later number of planes were arranged as per that number. Air India flew over 1 lakh Indians and ran 488 flights. This rescue was the single largest incident of civilian airlift in the history of the world. This mission is not just about war. This mission is about the diplomacy and how people survived the hardship to reach back home. In the end of this story, I just want to say that hope the civilians and students stranded in Ukraine may also come back home soon, and hope humanity finally wins.